what I promised a couple of videos back I would show you how to do, and that is how to make Crucian pound salt seasoning. Growing up, you would see ladies selling it at the fair, you know, AgriFest, sometimes just by the side of the road, you know, ladies selling vegetables and things like that would make up pound seasoning and sell. Let's say you haven't seen it or even heard of that term. You have probably definitely tasted it. Particularly at home in St. Croix, when we get fried fish, that is what you are tasting. According to Miss McKay, and of course we are in the Holy Grail, now we cook. According to Miss McKay, everybody has their own special, unique blend. However, all blends need to include the following as a bare minimum to qualify as, you know, what would be authentic. So number one, there has to be salt. Salt back in the old days, as they said, was not difficult to come by because it was a provision that was shipped, but also ladies would go out west to Frederickstead to Salt Pond, draw salt. It's a whole pulling process, drying it out, but that's where you would get salt from as well. And that's going to come up later when I kind of show you how I put mine together. Let's read directly from the book. Crucian salt seasoning is a mixture of salt and herbs. Remember, I told you that is really the basis of our flavoring. In the good old days, the basis of the seasoning was rock or pound salt. Recently, it's been necessary to rely on imported fine table salt, but we have a way around that. The herbs used in this seasoning include thyme, you have to have thyme, celery leaves, got to have celery leaves, parsley, yes, parsley, and not the curly kind that they use for decorations at going to the store. It will be called flat leaf parsley or Italian flat leaf parsley. You need black pepper, you need garlic, cardamom, mace, and chives. So those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, including the salt, base ingredients always have to go in. What you can put into your own blend, as she says, Crucian cooks have their own individual variation of this seasoning. By that reasoning, individual variation, we have right there the go-ahead from the crown jewel here to adjust it to our taste, to add different herbs, to add different spices, as long as they complement those basic 8 spices and salt that go in as the bare minimum or foundation of Crucian pound salt seasoning. Okay, so here we have our fresh parsley. You're going to notice that the way I make mine is a mixture of fresh and dried. And how do you handle that combination in terms of jarring and preserving it? I'll show you later, but it really just takes a teeny bit of time in the oven. So back to the fundamentals. You have fresh parsley, you have thyme, you have celery leaves, you have chives. This is one of my special ingredients there. I'm not going to tell you what that is. Of course, we have peppercorns and garlic. This is minced dried garlic. Of course, the chives. Over here is your cardamom, and mace is the spice that goes in next, but mace is very, very hard to get your hands on. I actually had some that my father sent up to the States for me. This is what fresh mace looks like when it's on a nutmeg pod. Mace is essentially the little squiggly lines on the outside of a nutmeg pod. So you know when you open up the nutmeg, there's the seed and you grind it, but on the outside are these little orange wavy veins that turn a little light brown, and that's mace. So mace is not only hard to come by, but when you find it, it is expensive. That's all I can really say. So if you can't get mace, or just are not willing to shell out too much for that one small bottle of spice that you're not going to use all the time, you can make a substitute. My way to substitute it is with nutmeg, of course, since it's related, it comes from the nutmeg, and then a touch of allspice to bring in that deeper, richer flavor that mace has. Oh, and there's my salt. I'm letting you in on a little secret that this at the bottom is rock salt, And this at the top is pink Himalayan salt. I like to use Himalayan pink salt because just like the old-fashioned salt that they would get at the pond, you get the earthiness of where that salt came from, not just a plain salt taste. So I think that by adding this, you create an element of authenticity or bring it to the dish. And that's just regular rock salt down there. Now, back in the old days, ladies would have a mortar and pestle, obviously bigger than this and obviously not made of wood, but usually with, stone, marble. They did have big mortar and pestles, but this one is nice but too small for us to use today. So it's ironic that just the other day I was kind of saying you don't always have to rely on modern kitchen appliances to get this stuff done. But if it's a choice between pounding these peppercorns until they're, small pieces or using a little grinder, come on, we're going to go with our grinder because this is the modern Crucian kitchen and we are also about saving time. So I have my favorite little chopper. You may have one that you love. This is mine. It's the Cuisinart Mini Mate chopper / grinder. I use this for spice grinding. So I'm going to start with the dry ingredient. I'm not going to put the salt in first. I'm going to put in my pepper. And I'm going to add the minced roasted garlic. Not roasted garlic, but the minced garlic. We could use fresh garlic here, but it's a whole nother level of drying that has to take place, and we don't have that kind of time. What I like to do to boost the punch of the fresh celery is to add celery seed. Now the rest of our dry ingredients. So that is the cardamom. Is a great spice, but it's very intense. So I'm actually not going to put the full amount in yet, nor am I going to put the full amount of our mace substitute. Go ahead and add those chives. And now I'm just going to start to grind these. I actually think I might add more pepper. Maybe not, because you are going to have to taste this. The cardamom is not too overwhelming, and that's actually what I'm going to do right now before I do anything else. I'm going to sort of take it in my hand. Good amount of pepper. Good amount of pepper, good amount of kick. What these are my little secret ingredient, but they are my tribute to one of the 7 flags, and of course a tribute to my Frenchies over on St. Thomas. Love them dearly and the culture that they have maintained. That would be tarragon. Tarragon is a very French herb. It's almost ubiquitous in a lot of French cooking. You can use it fresh, you can use it dry. I use it dry in my spice mix. So let's go ahead now and start to add some salt. Be very careful. I'm not just dumping salt in. I've sort of blended my rock and my Himalayan pink salt together. I'm looking at the level, and it should be somewhat equal to the darker layer. Okay, it may vary depending on what machine or tool you're using, but I like to go just about half. If you notice, the spices are still the majority, okay? And salt accounts for maybe about a half of the spices. So that's how we'll start off. All right, let's get this salt going. When you're hearing that loud clicking, that means that rock salt is still breaking down. Let's take a look and see. Okay, so you still have a little bit more rock salt to break up. Does not hurt to mix things around a bit. Okay. All right, so what I'm ready to do now is dump the dry ingredients, in here. So I'm going to just walk you through these steps here because my little machine broke down on me, and I'm going to move it to a bigger machine. But I just want to tell you what it is I'm doing right here. I'm breaking up the fresh herbs. You really just kind of need to break the celery in pieces and put it in. When you put in the thyme, don't input whole sticks. You have to peel the little thyme leaves off, and that's just as easy as putting your fingertips at the top and sliding down, and all those thyme leaves will come off. So you want to avoid the thyme sticks or twigs being in there. So that's all I'm doing. And eventually I'm just going to move it to a larger machine to help chop it and break it up and blend it. So my little Cuisinart grinder gave out on me. Just like that. But I've got a backup. Always have a backup in the kitchen. This is machine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more salt to our situation here. Got to be careful because, you know, we're all trying to stave off high blood pressure, those types of things. But the great thing is you can see the majority of this is herbs and spices. So that's really the flavors that we're looking for. I also feel like I need to add a little bit more minced garlic for sure. I'm just using my nose and I'm praying that my ancestors are whispering to me that that was time. Enough. Okay, or enough garlic. Now the thing is, you don't want to liquefy it, okay? But zoom in on that for me, please. That's looking good. And smell it. That's smelling good. Let me taste it to make sure there's a sort of decent salt distribution. Okay, that's good. So we're gonna do this part. So the parsley, and then all those other triangles. So I took everything that was left in here, put it all in here. So all of that, sorry it's messy. I'm usually not this messy to cook, but you know, if it's messy, it's gonna be good. But all of those fresh herbs and stuff you saw there, I took those and that's what's in here. And in fact, because I have a little bit more room and a little bit more dry ingredients that have to be absorbed, I'm just going to go through and add just a few more pieces of some things that got left to the side. Okay? Because the great thing about this is that you're not going to have to use massive amounts. A little dab will do you. Yeah, and you can take, you know, maybe a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of this and rub it all over a really nice sized piece of meat and get good flavoring. So I don't think we need any more salt. We are just going to grind this down to as grind as we can get it. Grind it down as far as we can get it without it becoming a paste. So right now, let's pulse. Okay. Let me get a minute. Okay. Woo! Look at this. Look at this. Oh. We're just going to go ahead and dump it all in our bowl. Look at that. That is fresh from the grind. Okay? Nothing but herbs. Just herbs, pepper, all kinds of goodness. Again, take your spoon, maybe play a little around a bit with it in your hand. Give it a little lick or taste. There's definitely enough salt in there. Definitely glad I didn't add any more salt. Okay, I think what we're gonna do now is show you the 2 different ways that you can store. Now, if you don't like the idea of really large chunks in, I use the rock salt because, again, that is what is closest traditionally. And seeing that rock salt also urges you or forces you to use it sparingly, right? So that you're not using a whole lot of salt. But if this is too much for you, if you're like, oh, I can't take all these chunks, just use kosher salt. Just use kosher salt. I have used kosher salt in this. Really, I've used it mostly when I've made it. I've used kosher salt, but I wanted to, again, try to stick as true to the recipe as possible and use rock salt. So how can you store this? Let's stay right there. The one thing is you want to be able to store this in a container that is airtight and won't corrode, according to Miss McKay. So you probably wouldn't want to put it in a glass jar with a metal top. A plastic container is much better, okay? And so you can, you know, put that in, fill it to the top, seal it, put it in the fridge, and use it that way. If you want to dry it, what you're gonna do is you're going to spread this out on a baking sheet. I would put foil on the baking sheet first, spread it out, and dump this on top and spread it in an even layer. Put it in your oven at a really low temperature, 175, 200, no more than 225, and kind of let the moisture dry out from the herbs. Oh, it just smells like heaven. That's the thing about it. It smells like heaven. It'll take you right back. So it may not look like the most appetizing thing in the world, but that is your Crucian pound salt seasoning. And this is in its moist stage just after the chop. Originally, you could dry all of the herbs first, the fresh herbs too, and then grind it up with the dry ingredients. But personally, I like to do it this way because I think it keeps more of the flavor of the fresh herbs. So make sure if you're gonna store it moist, that it's stored in a container like this. If you dry it on a low heat in your oven, but you still need to maintain it in a plastic container that can seal on itself. So that's it. This is your authentic Crucian salt seasoning. It is an absolute delight to sprinkle on your food to give it that authentic Crucian flavor, whatever it may be. You can put this on chicken, you can put this on pork, you can put this on beef, you can put this on goat, you can definitely put this on fish. You want to use it sparingly because, again, rock salt is plenty salty. If you want to avoid having to deal with large chunks of rock salt, just use kosher salt. And I would still recommend keeping my little secret ingredient that I shared with you, which is Himalayan pink salt, because that gives it, I think, that earthy, authentic. You can also put this in the freezer. You can put it in some baggies and seal them up tight, you know, and give it to your friends. Just say, hey, I made a little something. You know, next time you grill some chicken, sprinkle a little of this on there. So it can not only be something you use that you can freeze, dry, and use for a long time, you can actually give it as a gift. The gift of culture is always one of the best. So thank you so much for joining us, getting through the technical difficulties, and thanks, of course, to my wonderful cameraman, my son. And so with that, I say good night and thank you for watching Crucian Kitchen Creations.